This year, America's top hurricane scientists did something they almost never do. They issued a forecast so rare that it hasn't been seen in years, a prediction of a quiet Atlantic hurricane season. Fewer storms, fewer hurricanes, a 55% chance the season stays below normal. And all across the coastline, from Texas to the Carolinas, millions of people heard that forecast and did exactly what you'd expect. They relaxed. They put off buying supplies. They told themselves, not this year. But here's what the forecasters themselves will tell you, with genuine fear in their voices. Some of the deadliest, most catastrophic hurricanes in American history struck during quiet seasons exactly like this one. A season with barely half a dozen storms once produced the most powerful landfall the United States has ever recorded. Another quiet year delivered a monster that erased an entire city's suburbs in a single night. Stay with me until the end of this video, because the history of quiet hurricane seasons is a graveyard of people who believed a forecast was a promise. And this year, the trap is set more perfectly than it has been in decades. Let's start with what the scientists actually said, because the forecast itself is real, and it matters. In May, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released its official outlook for the 2026 Atlantic season. A 55% chance of a below normal season, 35% near normal, and just 10% above normal. The numbers. 8 to 14 named storms, of which only 3 to 6 become hurricanes, and just 1 to 3 growing into major hurricanes of Category 3 or stronger. For comparison, an average season produces 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 majors. Colorado State University. The other giant of seasonal forecasting came to essentially the same conclusion. On paper, 2026 looks like a year the Atlantic takes a breath. And there's a real scientific reason behind it. A planetary switch flipping in the Pacific Ocean called El Niño. Right now, forecasters put the odds of El Niño taking hold by midsummer at more than 80%. Here's what that means for hurricanes. During El Niño, unusually warm water spreads across the eastern tropical Pacific. That warmth pumps rising air over the Pacific, and what goes up must come down. The sinking air and powerful high-altitude winds it drives come down over the tropical Atlantic, creating something called wind shear. Winds blowing at different speeds and directions at different heights. Wind shear is a hurricane's natural predator. A developing storm is like a spinning column of rising air, and shear tilts it, tears its top from its bottom, and decapitates it before it can organize. In El Niño years, the Atlantic becomes a hostile nursery. Storm after storm tries to form, and storm after storm gets shredded. Statistically, fewer survive. That's the science, and it's solid. So the forecast is legitimate. The scientists are not wrong. And yet, every single one of them, when they announced these numbers, attached a warning. The director of the National Weather Service said it in one sentence. It only takes one storm to make for a very bad season. The head of NOAA went further. Category 5 hurricanes have made landfall during below-average seasons before. These are not disclaimers written by lawyers. They are scars. Because the people who study hurricanes know the history that the public forgets. So let me show you what a quiet season is actually capable of. Go back to 1992. That year looked almost identical to this one. An El Niño was in place. The seasonal forecasts called for suppressed activity, and the Atlantic delivered exactly that. One of the quietest seasons in decades, with only a handful of storms all year. Through June, nothing. Through July, nothing. The Atlantic sat silent deep into August, the latest start to a season anyone could remember. Coastal Florida enjoyed a perfect, calm summer. And then, in the middle of that dead quiet ocean, a weak wave of thunderstorms rolled off the coast of Africa. For days it struggled, sheared, and disorganized, barely alive. Forecasters watched it stagger across the Atlantic, until it found a small pocket where the hostile winds relaxed. And in less than 36 hours, that dying system detonated into a Category 5 monster named Andrew. In the pre-dawn darkness of August 24th, 1992, Andrew slammed into the suburbs south of Miami with sustained winds of 165 miles per hour. What happened next changed America forever. Entire neighborhoods in Homestead, Florida were not damaged. They were removed. More than 60,000 homes destroyed. 125,000 more damaged. Families who rode it out in closets and bathtubs emerged at dawn to find their streets unrecognizable. No landmarks, no street signs, no roofs, in some places no walls. 250,000 people were left homeless in a single night. The damage bill reached roughly $27 billion. At the time, the costliest disaster in U.S. history. Insurance companies collapsed. Building codes across Florida were torn up and rewritten. And the season's final storm count? Just 7 storms all year. one of the quietest seasons on record, produced one of the most destructive hurricanes in American history. The season was quiet. Andrew was not. And the people of Homestead learned the lesson that this entire video exists to teach. Seasonal forecasts predict the crowd. They cannot predict the killer. And Andrew is not an exception. He's a pattern. Rewind to 1935. That season produced only a small handful of storms. By every definition, a quiet year. One of them was a compact system that spun up over the Bahamas and crossed into the Florida Keys over Labor Day weekend. It remains, to this day, the most intense hurricane ever to strike the United States. A Category 5 with a central pressure so low it has never been matched at an American landfall. It swept a rescue train off its tracks and killed more than 400 people, many of them World War I veterans working in the Keys. The quietest of seasons. The most violent landfall in the nation's history. Or 1957. Another below-average year, another El Niño influence. In June. June, the very start of the season, when nobody expects a monster. Hurricane Audrey exploded overnight in the Gulf of Mexico and drove a wall of seawater across the low marshlands of Cameron Parish, Louisiana. Families went to bed, believing they had another full day to evacuate. The storm arrived early and faster and stronger. The surge traveled miles inland across land that barely rises above the sea. More than 400 people died. Some estimates say 500, making Audrey one of the deadliest hurricanes in American history. A quiet season. A June storm. Hundreds gone in a night. Or 1983, one of the least active seasons of the entire 20th century, with barely 4 named storms. One of them was Alicia, which formed practically on Houston's doorstep, spun up to a major hurricane in the western Gulf where no shear could save the coast, and tore through Texas, shattering skyscraper windows in downtown Houston and causing billions in damage. Fewest storms in generations. Direct major hurricane strike on America's 4th largest city. Are you seeing it now? Quiet seasons don't mean safe seasons. They mean fewer storms, while saying absolutely nothing about what any single storm becomes or where it goes. A season with 14 storms that all curve harmlessly out to sea is a great year. A season with 5 storms where one of them is Andrew is a catastrophe. The number that matters to you is not the seasonal count. It's whether one storm crosses your street. And this is where 2026 becomes genuinely dangerous. Not because of meteorology, but because of psychology. Because the deadliest ingredient in a hurricane disaster isn't wind speed. It's the guard coming down. Think about what coastal America has just lived through. In 2025, for the first time in a full decade, not a single hurricane made landfall in the continental United States. An entire year of dodged bullets. Now stack this year's official below normal forecast on top of that. 2 consecutive messages telling tens of millions of coastal residents the same comforting thing. You're fine. Emergency managers have a name for what happens next. Hurricane amnesia. Preparedness surveys show it year after year. After quiet stretches, fewer families stock supplies, fewer households review evacuation routes, fewer people buy flood insurance. And flood insurance takes 30 days to activate, which means the decision to skip it in July becomes unchangeable when a storm appears in September. Populations on the coast keep growing. Millions of new residents have never experienced a major hurricane at all. The 1992 residents of Homestead had heard a quiet forecast too. The trap isn't the storm. The trap is the silence before it. There's something else the quiet season headline hides. El Niño doesn't delete the planet's storm energy. It relocates it. While the Atlantic gets hostile, the Pacific gets generous. The same warm waters and favorable winds that suppress Atlantic hurricanes actively fuel Pacific ones. NOAA's own outlooks for the eastern and central Pacific this year anticipate active seasons. Hawaii, Mexico's Pacific coast, and even the remnants that ride into the American Southwest as catastrophic rain. That pipeline gets busier in years exactly like this one. The Earth's furnace never shuts off. It just changes which door the fire comes out of. And one more thing. The Atlantic itself is not cold. Even in this El Niño year, its waters are running slightly warmer than normal. Warm water is hurricane fuel, and it enables the most frightening behavior in modern hurricane science, rapid intensification. Storms exploding through multiple categories in barely a day, the way Andrew did, leaving evacuation timelines in ruins. Coastal residents just watched it happen months ago, when a Category 5 hurricane named Melissa spun up late in the 2025 season and hammered Jamaica in October. The modern Atlantic doesn't need many storms to produce a nightmare. It needs one storm, one warm eddy, and one shear gap of 36 hours. That is the exact recipe that built Andrew inside a season everyone had written off. So what does all of this actually mean for you, especially if you live anywhere from Texas around Florida and up the eastern seaboard? It means you treat 2026 exactly like any other year, because for your address, it is. The peak of hurricane season runs from mid-September through October. It is still entirely ahead of us. NOAA will update its outlook in early August, right before that peak, and even a below normal season leaves room in the forecast for up to 14 storms and multiple hurricanes. The checklist doesn't care about seasonal probabilities. Know whether your home sits in an evacuation zone. Keep water, food, medications, and power for at least several days. Understand that flood insurance bought after a storm has a name as 30 days too late, and burn this into memory. The phrase forecasters repeat like a prayer, it only takes one. They repeat it because they have stood in the rubble of quiet seasons. They have seen what one storm does to a coastline full of people who thought the odds were on their side. Here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Odds are for seasons. Disasters are for addresses. A 55% chance of a quiet season sounds reassuring until you understand that in 1992, the odds were quiet too. Right up until the morning of August 24th, when the odds stopped mattering for 250,000 people in South Florida. The forecast this year is honest. The science behind it is real, and the scientists who issued it are the same people begging you not to relax because of it. The Atlantic is calm today. The trap is set. Whether it springs on an empty beach or a sleeping city is the one thing no forecast on Earth can tell you. If this video changed the way you think about hurricane forecasts, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because the moment anything spins up in the Atlantic or the Pacific this season, we'll break down exactly what it is, where it's heading, and how seriously to take it. And tell me in the comments, do you live on the coast? And did this year's quiet forecast change your preparations? Be honest. I read every comment. Stay ready, stay watchful, and I'll see you in the next one.